Guys, a while back, I put out a community poll on what you wanted me to review, and this movie, much to my surprise, overwhelmingly took most of the votes. And so today, we're going to raise the dead. It's Pet Sematary 2 next on Drew Reviews. So, guys, growing up, I was a pretty big fan of Pet Sematary 2. It was Edward Furlong's follow up to T2, and that was kind of a big deal in 1991 92. So, I was kind of eagerly anticipating this one. This movie also stars Anthony Edwards and Clancy Brown, and I'm going to get right into the plot of this thing because chances are you've seen this anyway. But Jeff and Chase Matthews, played by Edwards and Furlong, after Jeff's seen the death of his mother Renee, who was this Hollywood actress, he picks up his practice. He's a veterinarian, and they move to Maine. And of course, Jeff, he's got all the typical high school teenager problems, bullies and making new friends, and so a lot of bad things end up happening. They end up burying his friend Drew's dog, and then Drew's stepdad Gus, who's the sheriff, some bad things happen too. They end up burying him. Gus ends up bringing back Jeff's mother Renee, who he had a fling with back in high school. They bring back the bully, and it's just basically Drew and Jeff and Chase getting through this, and you're basically kind of seeing this through Chase's eyes, Anthony Edwards' character, because he's unraveling the mystery as we go along. So I like the setting in this movie a lot. It's supposed to be Maine, and they shot actually in Georgia. And when I watched the movie, I didn't realize they'd shot there until I watched it recently, and I'm like, oh gosh, there's pine trees and red clay everywhere. So yeah, that if you've ever been there, that's Georgia to a T. And I really like the locations they used, and the little pet cemetery and the big pet cemetery beyond with the rock formations. A lot of thought and effort put into that. I really like the atmosphere of this movie. It was shot in 1992, so it's still got kind of that late 80s feel where everything's kind of backlit blue and you got fog running through. So it is a product of its time. And the effects are pretty good. I wouldn't call this movie a gory movie, but scenes where there are gore, they are done so well. I mean, things are just dripping blood, from the dog's bullet wound, to the neck wound on Clancy Brown, which is just disgusting. Anthony Edwards gets one later. I think there's a scene even in the kennel, where Zowie, the dog, gets a hold of these kittens, and you just see the aftermath, and it's just really gross, but it's effective. Acting wise, it's mostly good here. Anthony Edwards, I was kind of expecting a little more from, but like I said, he's just unraveling everything that's going on in this town. He's the new vet in town, and so they bring in Zowie after Zowie's been shot, and he can't get a heartbeat, and he's very unsure about things. The one scene in this movie I do love, and I think it's the best acted scene in the movie, is when he goes to the old veterinarian who's now a taxidermist, and he kind of unravels, what happened to Creed's Cat Church, and the way he acts that scene out, and just the deadpan that he has in that scene, that was easily one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And just definitely one of my favorite acted scenes in the movie. Edward Furlong in this movie is okay. He hadn't done anything before Terminator 2, so kudos to him. Kudos to Jim Cameron for pulling that off because he's not too terrible in that movie. But you can tell he really needed James Cameron in that movie to make him look good because there's a couple of scenes in this movie where you can kind of tell that he's acting. It's not enough to deter the movie for me, but you can tell, especially scenes when he's in with young Jason McGuire, who plays Drew. And here's another kid who had never done anything besides plays. And I don't know, I haven't looked him up on IMDb. I don't know what he's done since. But I really felt this kid in this movie. His acting, the despair he feels because, he loves his mom, obviously. But Gus, played by the great Clancy Brown, is his stepdad, and they hate each other. And you just feel, the hatred and the sorrow in that kid. And that is so well done from a kid who never acted before. So, sir, if you're listening out there, kudos to you for the job you did on this movie. But as I said, Clancy Brown, my goodness, he's chewing up every scene in this movie. Before, as Gus, he's really over the top. But when he comes back, when the boys bury him, wow, it's wild, this character. And it's pretty funny. There's a scene where Anthony Edwards and Clancy Brown end up getting into this fight near the end of the movie. And I was just laughing to myself because, here you got the guy from Revenge of the Nerds fighting the Kurgan from the Highlander. It's like, no wonder he's getting his butt kicked. The girls were all right in this movie. Jeff's mom, Renee, and then Marjorie, the housekeeper. But I felt like the romance that was supposed to have been there between his mom and his dad was a little off because you can look at them and tell she's quite a bit older than him. I actually looked it up, and the actress that played Renee Harlow was actually like 10 years older than Anthony Edwards in this thing. So when you watch it now, it kind of stands out. She's like 39 or 40 in this, but she looks like she could be anywhere from 35 to 50 in this. So yeah, to me, that felt like kind of a strange choice. The other thing I really liked in this is the music. Man, there's some really good music in this. L7, I love that song. The closing song, the credit song, is Poison Heart by the Ramones, which that and actually Pet Sematary are my two favorite Ramones songs. Maybe beat on the Brat with a baseball bat, but just love those songs. They fit the soundtrack nicely. There's some pretty big action scenes in this movie. The biggest and the most impressive to me is when Drew and his mom, Amanda, are trying to get away from Gus after he's been resurrected. And, he's on the shoulder of the road and pushing them and slamming into them. And here comes this truck and it's hauling potatoes. And they hit head on and potatoes go flying everywhere. That's just a really good visual. As far as scenes that I don't care for as much, I don't really care for that scene in the last act where the mom comes back. You've got Eddie Furlong, and he loved his mother, of course, and so he's just acting all kind of demonic, not demonic, but just sly and morose, and so I don't like the way that scene was acted. But then he's kind of turned on his dad. But then Marjorie comes in, with the dress and everything, and you got the boy who comes back, and it seems like it's too much. I know they were going for a big ending, but I think it could have been done, but it was a little clunky to me. But really, apart from that scene and that last act and a little bit of the uneven acting from Edward Furlong, he'd get better with movies like Pecker and Detroit Rock City. I don't think he ever got great, but, he got passable. I really did enjoy Pet Sematary too. And I looked on IMDb, and on there, this movie's a 4.9. That's ridiculous. This movie's way better. It's so well made as far as, something from that time period. And it's pretty decently acted for the most part. Like I said, Anthony Edwards isn't too bad. Clancy Brown's. The girls are good. Drew and Edward Furlong, who's all right. 4.9. I'm going to go a point and a half higher. A little bit more than that, actually. I'm going to go 6.5 for Pet Sematary 2. Shame on all you voting on IMDb. 4.9? Really? On my scale, 6.5 is an okay movie. I really thought I was going to rate this higher. When I was a kid, I'd say, 7.5. But, I can only go 6.5 on this. But I do really enjoy Pet Sematary 2. And let me know down in the comments what you think of this movie. So, guys, coming up next, I know I've got Conan the Barbarian coming, and I've got Demolition Man coming. And I'm not sure what order I'm going to put those out in, so just stay tuned. If you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, I'm Andrew, and I'll see you down the line.